with the recent virtue signaling by Canada's Health Minister Mark Holland that he was getting his flu shot and his COVID vaccine at the same time, I wanted to follow up on the $5 million Canadian taxpayer-funded MOSAIC study that launched in 2021, which was supposed to establish the safety of mixing and matching COVID shots. Here's what I found. Some of you may remember the investigation that I did that uncovered serious concerns about the push to mix different COVID-19 vaccine brands, which began in 2021. At the time, health authorities like Dr. Theresa Tam and TV doctors promoted vaccine interchangeability, despite a lack of solid scientific evidence to do so. Our former drama teacher, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, went so far as to make the sweeping medical recommendation to Canadians that the best vaccine for them is the first one available.
Health Canada and our experts and scientists have spent an awful lot of time making sure that every vaccine approved in Canada is both safe and effective. Therefore, the best vaccine for you to take is the very first one that is offered to you. That is how we get through this as quickly as possible and as safely as possible.
By February of 2021, the AstraZeneca vaccine was authorized for emergency use by Health Canada. It was suspended a month later for those under the age of 55 over blood clot concerns. During that time, 300,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine were administered in Canada, and Health Canada confirmed 1.5 million doses came from the contaminated Baltimore, Maryland manufacturing facility. Although the agency claims that they verified that the doses met quality specifications through quality control steps, they have since delayed and evaded my access to information requests about this supposed oversight of disturbingly contaminated COVID vaccine batches. During this time, Canada was launching a $4.8 million taxpayer-funded MOSAIC study to look into the effects of mixing and matching approved COVID-19 vaccine in adults. Its clinical trial endpoint was to look at prevention, and since this was about various mixing and matching, there is no placebo in place or mention of establishing safety. Despite health authorities and political figures endorsing the safety and effectiveness of mixing different COVID vaccine brands in the spring of 2021, it turns out that 3 years and $4.8 million later, the evidence supporting vaccine interchangeability remains limited, and since the information isn't publicly or readily available, I decided to call one of the program communications coordinators listed on an old press release. She was helpful, but confirms that she left the project about 2 years ago. Here's how that conversation went. When you left, where was the study? What stage was it at when you left?
So they actually kind of so are you based in Canada?
In Ontario, yes.
Okay, yeah. So basically the study, it got pushed and pushed and pushed, and then unfortunately what had happened is because most of the Canadian public had already started getting vaccines, they did struggle to get participants to sign up for the study.
Right.
So they didn't capture the amount of data or information, which was really frustrating for them. So I don't really know where it landed or how many people they actually got in the study, but I don't know how successful they actually were near the end.
I see. Yeah, it says here, this was a 2021 update, I guess, and I do know that there are $4.8 million of funding that went into it.
Yeah, a significant amount, yeah. And so we went live with the press release on, I feel like it was like May 20th, 2021.
Yeah, okay.
And then they went public with it before they had set up like all the labs. So that was kind of like, there was just a bunch of hurdles, like a lot of bureaucratic hurdles. So I could give you maybe Joanne's email address.
Thereafter, I reached out to Joanne Langley, the co-principal investigator of this research project. Langley is also a professor and division head of pediatrics at Dalhousie University and a physician at IWK Health Centre in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Her affiliations include being a pharma giant GlaxoSmithKline chair in pediatric vaccinology, as well as a researcher for the Canadian Institutes of Health Research out of the Canadian Centre for Vaccinology. Given the difficulties and bureaucratic hurdles as described by the former communications coordinator, I reached out to inquire about what stage the MOSAIC studies were currently in and if they had been completed. If so, what was the date of completion and when can the public expect the results of those studies to be posted? What were the findings of the studies, especially in terms of reactogenicity and immunogenicity? That's the reaction profile and its ability to provoke or elicit an immune response. And finally, if the MOSAIC studies did not proceed, what happened to the $4.8 million that funded them? Dr. Langley responded with a general update on the status of the MOSAIC studies, but did not directly answer any of the specific, very clear questions. She states that the study is not fully completed yet, since the last participant visit occurred in June 2023, and the data is still being analyzed, with the final unblinded data for primary outcomes expected to be available for review by investigators in December or January. There ended up being a mediocre 221 participants enrolled in MOSAIC 1 and 442 in MOSAIC 2, which is a very limited sample size to adequately assess safety and efficacy across a diverse population. What I have discovered through investigations and research over the last few years is that larger sample sizes are crucial for ensuring statistically relevant results representing generalized findings of the broader population. And these small sample sizes lead to a greater chance of missing key differences in outcomes, such as adverse reactions or differences in vaccine efficacy between groups. Small sample sizes in healthy individuals limits the availability to generalize the results, especially in those coined most at risk, since they often have one or more comorbidities, the same people who were excluded from all of the original clinical trials of these novel products and this particular study. Robust trials involve thousands of participants to ensure sufficient statistical power to detect subtle but significant effects, especially when measuring immune responses across different demographics. Dr. Langley's response did not provide any direct information on when the final results, especially regarding reactogenicity and immunogenicity, will be available to the public, or the findings of the study so far, and did not clarify what happened to the $4.8 million in funding. So I did respond seeking further clarification on whether or not all of that was used or if more was needed, etc. Langley claims that the study's findings will be released to various stakeholders and the public, but doesn't mention when exactly that will be. However, she does offer to include me in this communication when it becomes available. While this update is helpful, it leads me still to wonder why, after 3 years and nearly $5 million taxpayer dollars, there are no definitive answers about the safety and efficacy of mixing COVID-19 vaccines, even though that's been parroted and recommended ever since. With such small sample sizes, a lack of transparency, and no clear timeline for results, it's painfully obvious that this study would have been useful before the mass rollout of mixed COVID vaccine brands. At this point, its value is rapidly diminishing, if not already entirely irrelevant. Your tax dollars, hard at work. For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. Send Health Minister Mark Holland a message at nomoreshots.ca telling him to revoke market authorization for these injections. Find out more and submit your email to Minister Holland at nomoreshots.ca.